She went through every card in her mother's recipe box: oatmeal cookies, cornbread, pot roast, lemon bars. The apple cake was not there. Her mother had kept it only in her hands. And now, those hands were gone. This is a story about the things we assume we will always have time to learn. Stay with me. Sue Calloway was 54 years old. She lived in Louisville, Kentucky, in a house that was too quiet on weekdays and just barely full enough on weekends. Her husband David worked long hours, good man, tired man, the kind of man who fell asleep in his chair before 9 and apologized for it every morning. Her 2 kids lived out of state. She spoke to them on Sunday evenings, mostly. Brief, warm calls that ended before she was ready. She worked 3 days a week at a hardware store 2 miles from the house. Bookkeeping, numbers that always balanced. A world where things added up the way they were supposed to. The rest of her time, she filled. The way you fill a container without thinking about whether you're actually thirsty. Her mother Eleanor had passed 14 months ago, 79 years old, sharp until almost the end. A woman who had opinions about everything and apologized for none of them. She and Sue had spent most of their lives being too alike to be easy with each other, too quick, too stubborn, too certain they were right, and not enough time being simply together. But every October without fail, they made the apple cake. For 31 years, Eleanor's recipe, Eleanor's kitchen, Eleanor's yellow ceramic mixing bowl with the small chip on the rim that had been there since before Sue was born. It was the one place they never argued. Standing side by side in that kitchen, flour on their hands, apples peeled and sliced thin. They were just a mother and a daughter. No history, no friction, just the cake. Some of the most important things we share with the people we love never get said out loud. They live in the doing, in the standing beside each other, in the quiet repetition of a thing done together, year after year, until it feels like it will simply always exist, until it doesn't. It was a Saturday morning in late October, the first real cold day of the season, that particular cold that arrives overnight and changes everything. Sue had come downstairs early, wrapped in a cardigan, and stood at the kitchen window with her coffee watching the backyard go gray and still. Her daughter Amy had called the night before. She was coming home for Thanksgiving, first time in 3 years. "I'll make Grandma's apple cake," Sue had said. The words came out before she thought about them. Amy had gone quiet for 1 second. Then, "Oh my God, yes, please." The call ended warm. Sue had gone to bed smiling. Now it was morning, and she was standing at the kitchen counter, flour on the surface, apples in a bowl, Eleanor's yellow mixing bowl in front of her. And she realized she did not know the recipe. Not fully. She knew apples, cinnamon, brown sugar. She knew there was something else, something her mother added without naming it, just reached for a bottle on the second shelf and tipped it in and said, "A little of this." Sue had watched 31 times. She had never asked what it was. She had never written any of it down, because her mother was always going to be there to show her. Stay with her for a moment, because what Sue is feeling right now, standing at that counter, is not just about a recipe. It is about every question we didn't ask, every afternoon we didn't stay a little longer, every time we thought, next time. She went looking for the recipe box, found it on the 3rd shelf of the pantry, behind a can of chicken broth and a box of crackers, cardboard, faded blue, held together with a rubber band so old it crumbled when she touched it. She carried it to the kitchen table, sat down, opened it. Her mother's handwriting was on every card. Small, slanted, very certain of itself, the handwriting of a woman who never second-guessed a single letter. Index cards yellowed at the edges, soft at the corners from years of being handled. Oatmeal cookies, cornbread, pot roast, lemon bars, green bean casserole, Christmas fudge. Sue went through every card, slowly, carefully, turned each one over, read both sides. The apple cake was not there. Her mother had never written it down either. She had kept it only in her hands, only in her memory, only in 31 years of standing beside her daughter in a kitchen in October, measuring nothing, knowing everything. Sue held the empty recipe box for a long moment, then set it gently on the table. There is a particular kind of grief that arrives not in the first days, not in the funeral, not in the clearing out of rooms, but later, quietly, without warning. On an ordinary Saturday morning when you reach for something you were certain you had and find only the shape of where it used to be. She sat at the table for a while, thought about calling someone, picked up her phone, put it back down. Some griefs are too specific to share, too small to justify, too large to survive being put into words. She set the phone face down on the table and sat with it alone. The way you sit with certain things, not because you want to, but because there is no other way through them. Keep listening. Because what Sue does next, she will never tell anyone. Not Amy, not David, not even Ruth. But you will understand it completely. She got up, went back to the counter, stood in front of the yellow bowl, and started guessing. Flour. She knew flour. Butter. Her mother always used real butter, never the other kind. Brown sugar. Dark brown, not light. She was almost certain of that. Apples peeled and sliced thin. Her mother always sliced them thin. She could see the motion of it, the particular angle of her mother's wrist over the cutting board. That specific, unhurried angle, like she had all the time in the world, like there was no reason to rush, like this kitchen, this October, this cake, would always be here. Cinnamon. Definitely cinnamon. Nutmeg. Maybe a little. Her mother liked nutmeg in things. And then the second shelf. Sue looked at it. Vanilla extract. Her mother always had vanilla on the second shelf. A little of this. She reached for it. Tipped it in. Didn't measure. She mixed it the way she remembered watching her mother mix it. Slow, no electric mixer, just the yellow bowl and a wooden spoon, and a patience that had nothing to do with time and everything to do with attention. She put it in the oven, set the timer, then sat down at the kitchen table and did nothing. Just sat. Some people spend years trying to hold on to the people they've lost, keeping things exactly as they were left, avoiding certain songs, certain roads, certain recipes, and some people try to make the thing anyway, with what they remember, with what they can guess, with hands that learn by watching, even when they didn't know they were learning. The timer hasn't gone off yet, but something is already happening in that kitchen. Something Sue won't be able to fully explain later. Not to Amy, not to David, not to anyone. But you'll understand it. Stay with her. She's almost there. The house filled slowly, brown sugar going dark at the edges, cinnamon rising first, and underneath it all, something warmer, something older, something that had no name, but had always been there. It moved through every room the way her mother's presence used to, quietly, without asking permission, settling into everything. Sue sat at the kitchen table with her hands flat on the surface and her eyes closed. She was not trying to remember her mother. She was not trying to feel anything in particular. She was just sitting in a kitchen that smelled like October 1987, like October 1993, like every October for 31 years, like the last October they ever made it together, when Eleanor's hands moved slower but still certain, still reaching for the second shelf, still saying a little of this, like it was the simplest thing in the world, like it would always be available to be said. The timer went off. Sue opened her eyes, got up, put on the oven mitts, the old red ones that had been in this kitchen longer than her marriage, and opened the oven door. The cake was golden, not perfect. The edges a little darker than she would have liked. The center slightly domed in a way she didn't remember from her mother's. She set it on the cooling rack, stood back, looked at it. It was not her mother's cake. It was not 31 years of October kitchens. It was not the recipe that lived only in a dead woman's hands. It was Sue's cake, made from memory and guessing and love, and a little of this, and whatever that meant, it was enough. Before this ends, there is one more thing, one small, quiet moment that Sue will carry for the rest of her life. Stay with her, just until the end. She cut a small piece, just a corner, just enough. Put it on the small plate, the blue one, her mother's tasting plate, and stood at the counter and ate it alone, in the quiet kitchen, on a cold Saturday morning in October, eyes closed. It wasn't exactly right. She knew that. The cinnamon was slightly too much. The apples could have been thinner. Something in the balance was just a degree off from what she remembered. But underneath all of that, underneath the slightly too much cinnamon and the not quite right texture, it was there. That thing, that warm, unnamed thing that had always lived at the bottom of this smell. Her mother's kitchen, her mother's hands, her mother's voice saying a little of this, like it was the simplest thing in the world, like it would always be available to be said. She stood there until the plate was empty, then washed it, put it back in the cabinet, stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the cold gray backyard. The same backyard, the same October light, a different woman standing in it than she was this morning. Not healed, not whole, just a little less empty than before. The way a house feels different when something warm has been baked in it, even after the smell fades, even after the kitchen goes quiet again. The warmth stays in the walls for a while. It always does, not her mother's recipe, but her mother's bowl, her mother's October, her mother's a little of this, living now in her hands. Passed down the only way it ever could have been, not written, not measured, just felt and remembered and tried again. And for right now, so are we.